Now it's getting deeper into the technology, I think, because the next panel will be about the innovation on the blockchain, about crowdfunding and how we can use it as a company. Your host for this session will be Dr. Michael Geppert. He's a really well-known expert in crowdfunding in Germany, one of the community leaders. He is organizing the Crowd Day, right? But he will introduce your panel partners and your session now, and I hope you enjoy it.
So hopefully nobody is really leaving, otherwise you get shot. To make that point already in the beginning, that it's a serious business that we are talking about. So thanks for staying. Thanks for staying even it's so warm and it's great weather outside. Because I think Bitcoin in Germany is still, we are talking about it a lot, but it's still in the very, very beginning. I just went to Miami to a Bitcoin conference, and I told my colleagues on the panel that there were 1,200 people talking about Bitcoin and the future and what's going on, and that was last year in October. So imagine how things are really evolving. And in my dreams, of course, I wouldn't be able to look all the time to the US, what those guys are doing, but to really be initiative and innovative also in Europe, especially in Germany, in order to bring things ahead, because we have such a great infrastructure on developers, knowledgeable people, and of course ideas. This is what we are known for, right? So what we want to discuss today, and I want to introduce the guys who are with me on the panel, is the transaction between, where are the points that really tip crowdfunding, innovation, and blockchain, right? It sounds like a job that cannot be done because there are literally no tipping points in the first few, but we will try to explore a little bit deeper where are the tipping points and where these guys who are on the panel are coming from, what are the backgrounds, and then discuss some of the evaluation chains that really could bring us forward in the purpose of how we understand blockchain, innovation, and crowdfunding. So why don't we start with you, Guy? Go ahead and introduce yourself, where you're coming from, and what do you expect from this panel, of course.
Yeah, hi, my name is Mickey, and I will stand behind the table as I'm supposed to, I guess. My name is Mickey. I studied mathematics in London and then started working as an investment banker trading interest rate derivatives for JP Morgan. I did that for 6 years before starting my own business in Berlin, something completely different. Sold it 2 years later and then dove into e-commerce, working for Zalando when they were a little bit smaller, and helped them become a bit bigger. And then got noticed Bitcoin, and to me Bitcoin kind of summed up everything that I had done before, and recognized the potential and the future that Bitcoin has. So I started a company with my partners here called Smart Equity AG, the first publicly traded company that solely deals in cryptocurrencies, listed on the Hamburg Stock Exchange. We've got a couple of projects that we have invested in. Recently, the most exciting, I guess, is our merger with Coinbao. You might have heard about them. They've got the most promising and most best performing ASIC chip for Bitcoin mining. And together with them, we're looking for a $15 million investment currently.
Cool. Thanks. Alec?
Yeah, hi. I'm Alec Hahn. I'm a Bitcoin enthusiast since 2010. I'm actually a media artist, but earlier this year I founded a company, and I'm the CEO of Bitcoin 42. It's a crypto-centric company based in Tijuana. We have 2 Bitcoin ATMs, which also do Dogecoin, Litecoin, and newly now Blackcoin. And yeah, I'm also involved in a non-profit which aims to tackle social and cultural issues. We are now newly working with a non-profit which helps immigrants. So we are working in remittances, for example, in the south of Mexico. Key producers have an issue that corrupted bank employees look into the accounts of the people and then yeah, make problems to people who are like in fair trade agreements and earn too much in the eyes of someone else's. So we're going to try to help these people. And yeah, that's basically what I do.
Yeah, hello, everyone. My name is Radoslav Albrecht. I have a background in economics and worked in banking for quite a while at Deutsche Bank in London. After that, I was in management consulting and also did a lot of projects in financial services in Europe and in emerging markets. And about 1.5 years ago, I founded BitBond, which is a Bitcoin-based peer-to-peer lending platform, which means that we're a global platform where borrowers can apply for loans and lenders can fund these loans individually.
Thanks. And last but not least, Pavel.
Hi, I'm Pavel. I'm with Point9. We're an early stage VC fund out of Berlin, Germany. We invest in early stages in internet-based business models, primarily software and marketplaces. And over last year or so, we've been increasingly interested in financial services and Bitcoin. And we are a proud investor in BitBond, Radoslav's company. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah. So now you see basically that we have tried to gather quite a heterogeneous group of people who are coming from different backgrounds in order to, transform maybe the future of payment or get the next level of crowdfunding. So who of you guys have crowdfunded being an investor in some project or in some product already with a hand sign? So you invested in euros or dollars or in bitcoins? Who invested already in bitcoins? All right, perfect. So, and what we want to discuss now, and I think the first question makes it quite crucial, is it's about decentralization, is about getting away from the power of intermediates like banks, right? So I want to ask the group, and maybe we start with Mike. How do you see, when it comes to innovation, decentralization, and to not only Bitcoin but the whole protocol attire of Bitcoin, is that something that could be used, that everybody could basically pump up, every of these guys could bring up a new crowdfunding platform using Bitcoin because it's the right protocol? Or how do you see the differentiation between a standardized crowdfunding platform and decentralized payment system like Bitcoin?
Yeah, so I think in theory, there is nothing that stops you from just creating your own coin and start collecting money. I think one of the key issues, and it's Pavel's what you said earlier. Really, I think the difficulty is reaching out to the people. So getting the people to adopt it and trust that decentralized system to collect the money. I guess that is where the difficulty is. So once people have understood the strength of this technology, then I think the next step of implementing it and using it to crowdfund in that way globally all around becomes naturally.
Well, yeah, crowdfunding, yes, as you mentioned, anyone could create a coin. There are already some solutions out there. To mention is the Lighthouse from Counterparty is a coin. They have Swarm, which looks very promising. Obviously, the huge advantage would be that there would be very low fees. Yeah, but I'll give the mic to.
Thanks. So in my view, one of the main advantages that a technology like Bitcoin provides is that you actually have an infrastructure that is programmable and that you can run from a very small entity like a startup. If you do crowdfunding based on a traditional currency like the euro or the US dollar, obviously it's possible, everybody can start a business like that. But the problem is that just when you look at the infrastructure that you need, you would typically need to cooperate with a bank. You couldn't run the entire infrastructure on your own because it would be simply too demanding. and I'm leaving regulatory aspects totally out of the equation and just looking at the technology that you need. And that's the big advantage from my point of view that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies provide, that the costs from an infrastructure point of view to run a crowdfunding platform is much, much lower. And therefore, I believe that we will see much more competition in this field. And I think this benefits especially those people who actually use these platforms, because for the platforms, it's going to get more difficult to differentiate themselves and to provide a real customer advantage. But for the users of these platforms, I think it's going to be good because there will be just more competition in the field, following from the fact that it's much easier to start a platform like that.
Yeah, so I think I agree to what you have just said. In general, I think like crowdfunding itself, it's not a concept that was enabled by cryptocurrencies. It existed before. I think what Bitcoin, the way in Bitcoin makes it better and expands it is that it reduces transaction costs significantly and makes it international by definition. And I think most of the crowdfunding platforms out there are very local, so they're typically limited to one country, and the many reasons for that, but one of the key reasons is transaction costs, which Bitcoin reduces dramatically, and yeah, that's what I think.
From my understanding, one of the other main questions that everybody is asking out there, if you look about crowdfunding and Bitcoin, is what is about the transnational gender of money. So money is getting from Germany to the US, to Singapore, to Asia, and so on in terms of a Bitcoin or of a crypto coin, right? What is about the regulatory issue? How do you see that evolving? What is about the tax issue? What is about all the regulatory infrastructure is already in place in Germany, in Europe, in the US, and worldwide? Don't you see the banks basically killing the whole theme right up front and getting out their regulatory sword?
I think it's not up to the banks to kill it. It's like it's not the banks that do the regulation. It's the regulators that regulate banks and other financial institutions, in theory at least. But banks would like to think otherwise, I guess. But I think it's very hard to predict how it will play out. But there is a lot of regulation in place, and the challenge will be to transform it to the new concept or relatively new concept of cryptocurrencies. And there is risks and opportunities associated with that, but I'm not in the position to make a statement how it will play out because no one knows probably. Hopefully there will be like an agreement among countries to treat it in a similar way, whichever way that is. Otherwise it can become very hard to manage.
One question for that in the audience, who had already had a discussion with their local Finanzamt about Bitcoin? And of course I want to know, how did it work out?
My main negotiation was about the point of when the value got created, the problem of how is this taxed from the point of I created the value, I make my Steuererklärung. I made my claim to 6 months later, and so we agreed to fix the creation, the income, fix that on this point of value, and the rest till it got accounted. I'm not so good in financial English. From the point where it was fixed, the rest is some kind of speculation where it gets taxed in two parts, you know. The one on the point where I earned the Bitcoin with its value on this point, and every change of value till the end of it is some kind of speculation cost which gets taxed extra.
But that is tremendously important to know, because basically it's something that's sitting on everybody's desk here who raised their hands and invested somehow in Bitcoins, and it maybe has something in your Bitcoin wallet, right? Because I think somebody like the Finanzamt will come by and say, what is the value of that stuff that you have there? how did you gain it, and it's basically your personal income, and it's your personal profit. So be aware that these guys are watching you, right? So what do you think about, if these are decentralized? So the money is basically floating around and has no origin, just due to the owner who is owning the wallet. What's about something like, floating wallets, or is that possible technology-wise to go into a decentralized walleting system?
Well, what I would also like to mention is not looking up, but looking into the crowd or into the blockchain community that the self-regulation part. So I think what we can see happening now and in the future is that there are going to be smart contracting clients with which you could, for example, have a crowd-funded project, but the funds only get released after a certain time or after certain multi-signatures, so that there is also some security of the the crowd who supports the project, and that because everyone knows in Bitcoin world the transactions are not reversible. So there are some factors where I think within the community regulation can happen. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, you mentioned one thing in the Bitcoin world, right? And I doubt that the Finanzamt is already in the Bitcoin world, right? So so I think that there will be definitely some discussion going on and some general decision how to tax things like that. I know we have those discussions of regulatory issues and taxable issues all the time in crowdfunding, because also there it is a major impact on how the money flows and who's owning it, who is profiting from it, right? So the next question would be to Radoslav, is how do you see in terms of the Bitcoin future? Do you think that something like colored coins or individual coining could be an individual solution for individual specific topics or focus groups, or very individual transactions, like if you would invest, let's say, in real estate for crowdfunding by Bitcoin?
Yeah, so personally, I do believe in concepts like colored coins, because I think it's another aspect where we can decrease transaction costs, and where we can actually decrease barriers to entry of certain financing markets. So right now, if a company wants to sell shares of its company to the general public, it has to IPO, and typically you would do that with a large exchange like the New York Stock Exchange or Deutsche Börse in Germany. And to access these kinds of markets, you need to have a certain size. You need to have revenues probably way beyond 100 million euros per year. So the threshold to actually access these capital markets is really high. And if you have a concept like colored coins, almost everybody could actually sell shares of their project or of their company to the general public. Therefore, I do believe that these concepts at some point will be very interesting. I think right now it's a little bit too early, because we're in a phase where Bitcoin 1.0 type applications are just in a phase where they are not even mainstream yet, but maybe on the way there, which for now would be a good situation already. So I think it's going to take some more time, but I'm a very strong believer in concepts like colored coins, because the advantages that they provide to companies to refinance themselves from the general public, and maybe not just nationally but also internationally, are so big that I very strongly believe that at some point we are going to see this.
What's your view on it? And then Pavel.
Yeah. No, this is a very good point. If you speak to the Bitcoin developers, they will tell you, okay, stop talking about these things. I mean, we've got so many problems to fix here with Bitcoin. You can't go on and talk about these things in the future. But I think if you wanna get to the mass adoption of Bitcoin, you need to tell them what the future might look like, what it could look like. And one good example, I think, of what it could look like is this example of the sandwich shop. It's a very local kind of example. Imagine you're on your way to work, you always pass this sandwich shop, and you know they make the best sandwiches in the area. You know this because you walk past it every day and you eat it and you see the line that is 20 meters long every morning. And this guy, he wants to have some money to create a second sandwich shop. And you know that it will be successful because you walk past there every morning. And the way that he could be raising his money is via a colored coin. You just give in 10 euro, 20 euro, whatever you want, and you get some fraction of this coin. And you do this locally just by using your phone or whatever, and you give him the 20 euros, and everyone in this line can do this and support this guy, and he opens up this second shop, and so on. So this game of IPO is then not anymore a game of the big banks and the big elite, but of the local and the of the community and everyone in it.
I would also mention at this point probably BitShares and BitShares X, which is the first decentralized autonomous company, and it's pretty phenomenal. First of all, their delegated proof of stake concept, which is far more superior and faster with 10 seconds confirmations than the complete economic insane proof of work protocol. And yeah, and it pegs, right now you have a market there, a decentralized market, which pegs the dollars, so you can convert your Bitcoin, your BitShares X to bit US dollars, and it tracks the real world value of US dollars. And that's the plan, at least, of this company, to have any real world assets and track them, and that in a complete decentralized free market environment. So I think that is really also exciting to look at, besides of colored coins, and which is happening right now. So yeah, that's what I wanted to add to that part.
Coming back to the idea of like everyone investing in a sandwich shop, I think it's really cool, and it would be nice. I mean, it's a nice idea, and it's probably the technology, if it's there, that will be really nice. But the regulation of this, if you think like how much craziness there is going on about taxing, ownership of Bitcoin, the regulation of something like this is like 10 times the order of magnitude in terms of complexity. Things like protection of individual investors, all this kind of stuff. I think it will take years until it's kind of something that every sandwich shop can do, even if it is technologically possible and feasible tomorrow, right?
So if you had read the news, I think 2 days ago, Matthias Grüner von Fido Bank. Who knows Fido Bank of you guys? That is basically in the target group, I guess. So Fido Bank released a statement that they are now accepting Ripple network transactions, right? So they are opening up definitely now a definite gateway in their standard interface to kind of a Bitcoin world somewhere, right? So do you see in future banks in a traditional way, like the Deutsche Bank, like the Commerzbank, like the big ships, really opening up, or do you more or less see, as we see it in crowdfunding, by the way, too, is a very, very distant view, just checking it out and maybe reacting counterproductive?
I think it's like for banks, it can be practical to use these technologies, right? And I think what Fido is doing, I don't know for sure, but I think they're just using Ripple or want to use Ripple to make their internal operations more efficient. So exactly. So right now they use Swift or whatever all those intra-bank protocols are called, and they're old school and inefficient and expensive. So I think they replace that with the Ripple network. They don't open up and kind of become a Bitcoin bank or something like that. They just use the ideas and the technology for their internal processes, which makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Do you see the big ships coming into that way, or is it just one of the heroes?
I think there is a lot of kind of talk that Ripple is talking to banks and tries to make the solution appealing to them, but I think Fido is the first one I heard of, so like in the official way. Yeah.
So I think that this technology can definitely be very beneficial to banks, but I think from what I hear in the media and what I see is quite the opposite, that banks are very much on the back foot. They feel threatened by this idea of decentralization, and the comments that come out of banks at the top are mostly negative. I think we have a question.
Maybe first, Alex.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, sure.
I just used the microphone.
My name is Daniel from Coiner. Maybe some people have seen me yesterday. We're working on another currency concept, but I wanted to answer your question concretely. We are talking to different banks, big ships in different countries, and they're opening up, and they are asking us now to consult them in Switzerland, in Italy, in Germany, in France, and in England, and in Austria. I know concrete big ships that are trying to find a way to enter or to participate in that new market. So they are opening up, at least some of them.
Yeah, a colleague of mine in Mexico City, he talked also indirectly, and some others in the community, in the Mexican Bitcoin community, talked directly with the Bank of Mexico, and they are very open and interested and cooperative. So there is some possibilities there. I would like to mention also that we might look also into the past, like what did the World Wide Web have on the postal industry? What did Napster and then later the whole BitTorrents have on the music and film industry? They are more or less forced to adapt. It might not be voluntarily, but if you see what the end user wants to have, that's what they'll have to come up with.
All right. So perfect. Everybody kind of said something, right? So the other big topic I think that is kind of over everything as a meta theme is mobility, right? Ubiquity in mobility. The end devices we use, if it's Android or if it's an iPhone or if it's still a Nokia, if you're an old school guy, which is fine. So basically, all this is happening in terms of that these guys are sitting on tremendous amounts of data and tremendous amounts of relationships of payment, mostly credit card. And as you might have heard, the iPhone 6 is coming out those days. And the speculations tell that Apple is kind of a bank in the future, maybe with NFC as a technology. So do you see that there is a new dominant player maybe in the house in the future, maybe in the near future, shaking up the payment issue, and Bitcoin or any other cryptographic protocol is kind of enabling them even more to do that, and that your mobility device is your bank in the future to be concrete?
I mean, it's hard to speculate about what they will release and what it will mean, but certainly there are those big companies that have the power to really influence the financial services world, right? And I think it's not only Apple, it's Facebook working on something, it's Amazon working on something, maybe Google at some point. But what exactly and how it will happen, I don't know, but I can imagine that some of them might be looking into using kind of cryptographic stuff just to make their services better and more appealing.
I think it would be also good to mention that virtual currencies are not new entirely, and that they have been discussed and developed since the last 20, 30 years. And Amazon and Facebook have already looked into this since years, but we should mention that that is exactly the genius part of the blockchain, to bring the public ledger to everyone's hands, so you don't have some booman who can be foreclosed or have any issues, legal issues. So.
I think one aspect that might be interesting about large players like Apple providing their own payment networks is the question of how open these networks are going to be. Because typically these large companies have a huge interest in actually providing closed services, because then profit margins are typically higher. And one of the big advantages to the consumer of Bitcoin is that everybody has access at almost zero cost, because the wallets that we use are typically open source software. So the Schildbach wallet, everybody can download it on their phone and just use it. And Apple typically will not be interested in providing open source solutions because they want to earn money, right? So I think they have a huge advantage because they can access a lot of customers just, you know, within 1 second when they publish something new. But it will probably almost always be a closed system, which will therefore be a little more expensive and a little harder to access for consumers. So they might rely on technology like Bitcoin, but I think the way they are going to design it will still be different from the core Bitcoin world.
I totally agree with you, and I think this is one of the major disadvantages that these big corporations will have in the future, is what we've seen with Bitcoin. What I love about Bitcoin so much is this open sourceness about it and the huge innovation that it drives, because everyone has got something to say about it, and everyone has got some great ideas, and everyone around the globe can work on it together. And I think this kind of innovation just cannot be beaten by a closed system.
Any ideas from you guys? You know, how you see there the possible uplift from big corporations getting in and using the mobility as a liftoff? You again?
I'm talking to a lot of businesses because of what we do, and as I call it, the real economy gives a very interesting view on that. If you want to access, or if you want to have businesses taking part in a system like that, and no doubt that all this open sourceness is really a big thing and really cool, many businesses always want to have somebody to rely on, to talk to, and this is really missing. And this is what they keep on telling me. I mean, there are companies consulting them for Bitcoin issues, yeah, but that's not really what they want. So there's a big gap between what we all love and what the real economy needs, and this hasn't been closed yet. So this is really important in order to get things started in the real economy, apart from many others.
So I don't know how we are on the timing. I just look on your watch. I wanted to close around, maybe to give everybody a kind of a vision statement, I would call it. Right? This was visionary, by the way. So just, you know, like you mentioned Halo. So look into the future, your possible future, without regrets, and say, you know, this is, I think, how future peer-to-peer lending equals crowdfunding, equals innovation, equals the usage of something like a blockchain mechanism could look like. Just to give an outlook, please.
Yeah, I'll start. Yeah, so recently I got in contact with a guy called David Zimbeck, who developed a program called BitHalo and BlackHalo. I think it's really exciting because with it you can make decentralized markets and exchanges, but what the real genius part about it is that you can enforce contracts. It's a smart contracting client, and like a state only works when it can enforce its laws. That is enabled through this client through a special feature which he calls a double deposit escrow. What that means is that have an escrow account and can do a security deposit in two parties into it. It has also a time function, so you say after a week, I want to have this delivered, I'm going to pay you this much, you put it into escrow, the other party makes also something into the escrow. When the deal worked, you sign it with a cryptographic signature and the funds are released. So this I think is really exciting, and yeah, that is like what I'm into.
That's
right
a future.
Now.
See that as a future development.
It's a client which is already there. It's out there. You can download the beta, and yeah, and I think in the future we will see a lot based on that. I think with APIs maybe making it user-friendly because it's kind of a bulky, not really pretty-looking thing. I see a lot of potential in that because I think enforcement is really important where you have reversible transactions. And this is only possible within a cryptocurrency coin. You can't do that with fiat. And also the cool part is it doesn't need a middle coin. It can work on any blockchain. It could be Doge, Halo, He's using Black Halo because it's he thinks it's a more superior coin, and it also has fast transaction times. So that is where I stand right now, and also looking into the future.
Would be quite matched that future, I guess.
Yeah. Bit Halo and Black Halo. Welcome.
Your future course?
Really hard to make those types of things. But I think the future I'm looking forward to is much more simple. It's about a wider mainstream adoption of the Bitcoin 1.0, of the very simple kind of original idea. For you guys, for most of the people out there, it's still something like super complicated. So I'm looking forward to someone coming up with like a wallet that is usable for everyone, right? That just you send Bitcoin to your friends, you don't even know the chains and the keys and everything. I'm looking forward to people in emerging markets where like 70% of the population has no bank account to take advantage of this great innovation and actually using it, because they not. I think the biggest adoption of Bitcoin is in Europe, in the US, actually the count or the regions that need it least. So these are the things that I'm looking forward to. I think there is a great opportunity for young companies to make those things happen. Yeah, that's something that I wish I see. And many people, like, I think a currency like it had such huge network effects that I believe that in the kind of everyday transactions there will only be Bitcoin. There will not be other altcoins, even if they're technologically superior. There is so much value in having a currency that everyone uses that the marginal innovation is much less relevant on the technology side. I think the adoption, the network of people using a currency is its biggest value. So yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of what Pavel said. There was one thing I would like to add. My vision is that Bitcoin in the future might become a backbone for a lot of transactions where we might not even see it. So today, a lot of things, a lot of information obviously is transferred via the internet, but we don't even realize. We know it if we think about it consciously, but we don't think about it at all. Nobody's talking about HTTP all day long. And we're in a state where we're actually discussing HTTP and not a lot of the applications that run on top of it. So my mother uses the internet almost every day, but I think she has never even heard the term HTTP. And I think this is a state where Bitcoin might go to at some point in the future, that we will be using it a lot and it will be something very common, but we won't even realize that we're actually using Bitcoin for a lot of smaller applications. And it must not always be a huge thing. It can be a lot of things that make our everyday lives easier. And I think once we get to that point, Bitcoin will simply make a lot of financial transactions easier without us even thinking about it.
Okay. I don't have too much to add to these great comments, but maybe one thing I would like to say is one great thing about the time that we live in right now is this unpredictability. No one can even predict the next 5 years, and this thing will get faster and faster and faster. The unpredictability will get higher and higher, and I think what I would like to see in the future is a wide adoption, a shift in consciousness that we don't need some entity telling us what is good and what works and what doesn't work, but the realization that we can create these systems where every single one of us has an equal right to say something about it and an equal share in it. And what that will create, I think, is you can only dream up scenarios what this might mean in future. I could very well imagine, I mean, money, fiat money right now is just a placeholder for value. It doesn't really have any value in itself. So maybe in future we will live in an environment where we don't even need these placeholders anymore, but we have loads of coins that stand for something, actually do stand for something, and we just exchange those freely with each other. So we have a virtual world that represents our physical world one-to-one, and it just makes it easier and frictionless to exchange in the virtual world. But yeah, who knows?
Thanks for these truly visionary last words. However, of course, as we all know, we are all living in a real world, and there are two factors, which is power and greed, that is basically hindering some of those visions, and it's very into our DNA, looking into the thousands of years back in time. But hopefully we get there, and people kind of wake up and see what they are able to do, and empower people with something like crowdfunding and Bitcoin. Thank you so much for letting us talk to you and letting this panel show what they are all about and what their visions and what their products are. And I hope you have a great time at the lunch time, because this is what we are getting you now into the lunch break mode. Thank you so much.